Have you ever noticed that on some days, the smallest thing completely sets you off, and on other days, you can handle way more without breaking? Hey, it's Corinne, your mental performance coach for everyday life, and welcome back to Everyday MVP. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you overreacted and wondered, why did that affect me so much? By the end of this episode, I want you to understand why that happens, and more importantly, how to start fixing it with one small intentional step this week. Overreacting doesn't mean you're weak. Most of the time, it means something in your life is draining your ability to cope. That is where vulnerability factors come in. Vulnerability factors are the things happening in your life, often in the background, that drain the energy you need to handle everyday challenges. When that energy is depleted, stress and overwhelm take over much more easily, and they start impacting your mental, physical, and social well being. When this happens, you lose the ability to think clearly or see situations as they really are. You're more likely to snap, shut down, avoid things, or make choices you wouldn't normally make. For example, maybe you snapped at a coworker or partner over something so small this week. On the surface, it looks like an overreaction, but underneath that, you've been sleeping for 4 hours a night, skipping meals, and dealing with ongoing stress. The reaction wasn't about the moment, it was about depleted coping energy. The tricky part is vulnerability factors often fade into the background. We forget they're there. But when they aren't taken care of, you do not function nearly as well as you could, and you don't handle life as effectively as you could either. So let's talk about these vulnerability factors and what they actually are. They generally fall into three categories. Mental and emotional is the first, physical, and then social. The mental and emotional category includes things like general stress, chronic overthinking, people pleasing, burnout, depression, and perfectionism. The physical category includes things like poor diet, lack of exercise, injury, fatigue, not taking medications as prescribed, and both acute and chronic illness. And the social category includes social isolation, relationship conflict, and lack of support. As you heard those lists, did anything stand out to you? Do you feel like you're struggling in one or more of these areas? If so, you might be wondering, okay, so what do I do about it, Corinne? This is where self-care strategies come in. Self-care has been really misrepresented. Somewhere along the way, it turned into bubble baths and checking out of life. And don't get me wrong, bubble baths aren't the problem. Avoidance is. At its core, self-care exists to reduce vulnerability factors. That's the whole point. Which means self-care isn't about doing nothing. It's about taking care of the basic things that support your overall well-being, even when they're uncomfortable. For example, if poor diet and lack of exercise are impacting your life, whether you want to admit it or not, self-care means building healthier eating habits and moving your body. Some people hear that and say, that's not self-care, but it is. You're taking care of yourself now so future you can function better. You're choosing long-term benefit over short-term comfort. Now, if fatigue is the issue, self-care looks like building better sleep habits. And if you're dealing with an injury, it might mean going to physical therapy and actually doing the exercises they give you, even when they're hard. For mental and emotional vulnerability factors, self-care includes things like mindfulness, gratitude, and restorative activities to manage ongoing stress and depression. Mindfulness helps when overthinking or burnout is draining your energy, while restorative activities help refill what's been depleted. Another powerful tool is value consistent behavior, acting in alignment with your values even when motivation is low, especially if perfectionism or people pleasing is showing up. Value consistent behavior might mean saying no when you normally people please, or showing up imperfectly instead of waiting until you feel ready. And yes, we can absolutely dive deeper into value consistent behavior in a future episode. Finally, let's talk about the social category. If you're struggling with social isolation, self-care may mean putting yourself out there and connecting with others, even though that's uncomfortable. Self-care isn't supposed to be easy. I'll say it again. Self-care isn't supposed to be easy. If you're dealing with relationship conflict, maybe you need intentional alone time. And if that's not helpful, self-care might mean having a difficult conversation, learning better communication skills, or even getting support from a therapist. At the end of the day, self-care was never meant to be easy or glamorous. It was meant to push you toward doing the hard things that support your overall well-being, not just today, but in the future. So here's your challenge. Notice the vulnerability factors you're dealing with right now. What is happening in the background that you may not be aware of? The things quietly wearing you down and causing you to shut down, overreact, or make choices you wouldn't normally make. Once you've identified them, choose one self-care strategy to start practicing this week. Just one. Because even a small step makes a difference, and small steps are easier to take. Choosing to act, even imperfectly, builds momentum and restores your energy. Take care of yourself this week, not in a way that feels comfortable, but in a way that actually supports and reduces those vulnerability factors. And remember, MindLink team, your most valuable player is you. Every day is a new day, a chance to show up for yourself. Breathe in, breathe out. You've got this.